Welcome back. Today's project is very simple. It's just going to be a fabrication project. There's not going to be any machining in it. What I'm going to do is build an outrigger table on the side of the vise. Because the problem is when you've got a piece of metal clamped in here and the overhang is a bit long, then it tends to want to fall down on the one side or press down, and then I'd have to put a jack or something underneath to keep it upright. So the outrigger table will solve that problem. And even if you've got long stock that's going, that's resting on the saw horses, they tend to fall down on this side and land up on your toes or something. So yeah, so I'm going to address a couple of issues with this table. I'm going to use it from a piece of metal, and this metal's got a bit of a history. And if you look at this contraption here, this is the plate that I'm going to use. Now what this was my entry into machining. Now this was my first lathe that I've built from sheet metal using only a grinder and a drill press and a welder. Just 2 plumber block bearings on top of here with a shaft, a small little 100mm 4-jaw chuck, pulley at the back, and a drill press motor mounted on the back that was driving the shaft. Now I've made a couple of parts of it, and most of this thing was built using this very same lathe. Because when I started up, I just used pieces of angle line on ends to hold the lead screw in place, just to get the thing functional, and used the spanner to crank the lead screws. And it was quite a mission, but got the job done. And I ended up making these bearing blocks. One side it's got the radial bearing in it, and the other side had a thrust bearing in it, and that was used to replace the pieces of angle line. I even made the hand crank wheels on it and everything, and it was working pretty well. The only issue that I had was that the lead screw, because it was strangler thread, it wore out very quickly or seized up. And the motor was a bit underpowered, but it got me into machining, and it was a good start for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the plate off here, and then I'm going to do that off camera, and then see how I'm going to fit it in the drill press, bandsaw. See you in a bit. This is a typical setup that I'm trying to avoid, where I need to cut a long piece of stock. I usually cut a plate that's way taller than or wider than what the vise can take, so I orientate it in a vertical position, and then if it fits between the bow and the blade, I can cut any length as long as it fits underneath the blade. Now, in a case like this, the bulk of the material is on the outside, and I have to jack it on the side so that it doesn't flip over to the side as it's cutting. And once the outrigger table is in there, the need for jacking will be eliminated. Okay, just aligning this plate more or less. This is not a precision operation. Put a 1 to 3 block behind it. Okay, I've made a recess here so that the plate goes all the way up against the side of the vise here. Okay, so I'm just going to clamp it down and then tack weld it at the bottom. Okay, I've done welding up the plate. It's cooled down. Luckily for me, it didn't draw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this corner here because it just looks weird, and then spray paint it. Now what I've done on the bottom here, as it was clamped to the base, I just marked it out with a paint marker and drilled it on a drill piece. Now I did make it a 0.5 millimeter oversized, so it's 8.5 instead of 8 millimeter holes, just to give me a little bit of play. Okay, before I can paint it, I first need to mount it, and take a first cut into the plate, because it's in its current state, it's too high, so the blade will cut into it. And once I've got a line cut in there, then I can put it in a mill and just mill that little slot in there until that cut mark disappears. Then it will prevent it from doing any further cuts into the table, because currently the table is higher than the blade's end. I'm happy. Table is in. I got clearance for my blade, and it's nice and flat, the transition between the vise and the table. So yeah, now I won't have to set of parts that's gonna bend over as soon as you apply pressure to it with the blade. And I can use or cut any side of my stock. So if I've got that long pieces that I usually cut with a small section on this end and the bulk of it on this end, I'll have a surface for it to rest on. So I hope you enjoyed and I hope it was helpful.